Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. I am very delighted to welcome you to this important conversation of role of CSR communication in amplifying CSR initiatives. We all know that CSR has evolved from annual report mentions to an integral part of brand identity. And that's where communication play a powerful role. So first of all, I'd love to hear from each of you. How do you see the role of communication evolving in the CSR space today? So we'll start with you, Neha, first.
Hi, Ritika. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for, especially for M for putting the session together. So, you're talking about evolution of communications in CSR. I think that's evolved as the space itself has evolved over the years, right? From, many years ago, from being just an initiative to it evolving into a participatory model, where there was increasing focus on why, how, than just the what, which also meant that there was increased focus on the impact and the long-term impact of what you were doing today, to now it really sitting at the heart of business strategies, right? And that's how even communications around CSR has evolved. In fact, if I look at it, it's not just external communications as well. It's a lot more internal communications, right? I mentioned it's become participatory, so every stakeholder becomes extremely critical in the process. In fact, just to give an example on how internal communications can play such a critical role in changing how people within the organization also look at some of your initiatives. We run a program with a non-for-profit for the last 3 years where we've been helping them empower children in communities. And just this year, right, we said, okay, we've been talking about it, but let's make our internal stakeholders see what impact has it brought about. And we highlighted some challenges, right? The fact is, you're helping communities and you're creating an infrastructure, right? But these children do not have role models. These children do not have anyone to look up to. So if I want to pursue a career, okay, I'm going to school, but what do I do next? And just after hearing, what is it that they're looking for, what is the impact that we've done, we have voluntarily people in the organization today who've given their time over weekends to mentor children. And that's the impact of communication, right? And this is not mandatory. This is not mandatory in the organization. This is all out of the fact that everybody, wants to participate. And that's the kind of impact that it can create.
So, Kirti, I would like you to share your perspective on, in the last session, Mr. Ashwini Singla shared a very key point that how can we make CSR more transformative than less transactional and more transformative.
Brilliant. Can you hear me? Brilliant. And I also quoted a word that he spoke with the more and more reputational relevance that has come into play, and therefore CSR, and therefore maybe the long-term perspective and the more and more change and interventions that you create, which is eventually what leads to transformation, so as not to use the word transformation lightly over here. But just to address your question, maybe I can do that with an example that I have the privilege of serving a brand or maybe a company which is more than a century or 121 years old. So I hold a very big responsibility to put that in perspective, that with the Taj, loosely used as Taj Group, but Indian Hotels, we have the iconic brand Taj. I've had many opportunities of communicating on CSR. It's my privilege to do that. But I'm going to just take you back to, state this with an example very quickly in the interest of time. In 2008, going back to the very horrific 26/11 attacks that the company faced at that time, for the community, for the social impact, for serving the community at that time, Mr. Tata had announced the constitution of a trust. The trust was formed and it served everybody apart from its employees, because the employees do get taken care of by the organization, but it is the social communities which were largely impacted, and the trust was created. Today, I think about 17 years later, the trust continues to dispense on its mandate of serving the communities which were apart from its employees, including the wider universe of, eventually the trust mandate expanded itself to serve other natural disasters or attacks or Uttarakhand or Kerala floods, etc. And for 17 years, the social impact of having formed that trust and the storytelling that came around it through the beneficiaries, through the impact, it was not just a small intervention, it was not just a change, that was the transformation that we have. And eventually then during the COVID times, the trust dispensed again with some 1.6 million meals, 60,000 room nights, serving the healthcare workers. So CSR communication, where there is action, plays a huge role on the reputational relevance. And the last point I want to make, because I know I'm going to miss the opportunity after it passes me, is that this has had a huge impact on our brand. Just this morning, we've had the privilege to send out the press release to announce Taj as the best brand across sectors by a branding agency in UK called the Brand Finance. So that is what the impact of CSR communication can be. Thanks.
That's a very interesting take you have shared. So moving to Rajiv, CSR has evolved from being a nice to have to a must have. So can you please say what differentiate genuine CSR communication from greenwashing?
Yeah, I mean, greenwashing has now become a and what the earlier session actually said, that do you want really a transactional change or a transformative change? So I think that's where the greenwashing basically comes. But I largely come from the pharma and the medtech sector, the medical devices sector, and we in any case, I think this particular sector in any case gets embroiled into having something which goes beyond society and beyond CSR. So what I largely look at since I head CSR. So when we started this initiative almost like 11 years back, we said that we don't really want to do CSR just to offset that 2% quotient. We wanted to do it in a real-time PPP mode, and this was largely PPP mode for an internal zest that was yearning within the company. And we actually didn't want to look at the PPP as a public-private partnership mode. It was more to engage the internal stakeholders, the board, the external stakeholders that we could actually manage wherever our factories were. And we termed it as a participation for a public purpose. So that's where, the CSR moved from the conventional or the transactional CSR that we heard in the earlier session to a transformative CSR. In that also, I completely, we had a team and we thought that we'll not, look at CSR from a lens to only a societal aspect. Communications was also engaged into it. And my team from the comms, we said, look, CSR needs to move. When it moves from the corporate, it is the corporate social responsibility. But when it comes to the communications team to highlight CSR, to get those, newspaper coverages and all that, then we have to do CSR in a very different way. And we termed it like communicating to the stakeholders with reputation. So CSR, communication, stakeholders, and reputation. So we looked at that lens, and whatever communication strategies we weaved around CSR, that helped us even in COVID. Largely from a pharma and a medtech company and a healthcare company, it was struck to us like anything. And it really helped us because CSR was moving from occupational issues to societal issues to even managing the stakeholder requirements and the CFO's requirements, because that used to come back to us saying, भाई इतना पैसा खर्च करना है यार, खत्म करो इसको किसी तरीके से. So we didn't want to really look at that. So 3-4 areas where we looked at was to work with the government on this, and we came up with a program called the SDGs, and it's not the Sustainable Development Goals that we looked at. And typically, since we're a cardiovascular company, we looked at a CSR where we could do a catchment area in all the 5 factories in India, where we could look at SDGs from a Swasth Dil goal. It's a participative thing where we engaged the aspirational districts in Niti Aayog to build capacity in GPs, which is general practitioners, the general doctors, to understand cardiovascular diseases much better, report them much earlier. And the second part was to catch them young, which is the cardiologists who do not get an opportunity to work in, or the young cardiologists who don't get an opportunity to work in cath labs to do, CABGs, stenting and other things, is to give them a hands-on experience on that. And that ultimately tick box the fact that yes, in an aspirational district where there is no means, where there is no hope for healthcare, at least this would give them a respite. So, our CSR was basically built around societal initiatives.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. So moving to Bhavna, carrying forward the same question, how can we make CSR more transformative? Also, can you share any example of the successful campaign you have led that includes the role of communications in making the initiative more impactful?
So, firstly, I'd like to thank E4M for talking about CSR and communications. Very many times it's only a mandatory thing to do, and somebody sits in office and does some donation somewhere, and that was loosely termed as CSR. But now it's extremely structured. For me, for example, like Rajiv, I come from the pharma industry. Bharat Serums and Vaccines is a biopharma company. And by default, all that we do touches people's lives. So we are actually very privileged that way to swipe in and swipe out because we feel we've made a difference. But in terms of what we do as CSR, we have very interesting projects. And one such project is something that we are very proud of. It has to do with sports, health and sports. So, and what we do is we do it for women's sports. So we have teamed up with the Abhinav Bindra Foundation, and the foundation runs a course, a program called Sports for Her. This program is very interesting because it picks up potential Olympic medal winners from rural India. All those women who have the zest in them and who unfortunately don't have the means or the direction of winning and how to really excel in their sport. So the foundation coaches them, takes care of their nutritional needs, their psychological needs, and that is where we work with them. And in our own small way, we are very proud that we have been working with them for almost 3 years in running. And we have actually seen few of our athletes win at the Asian Games, at a precursor to the Olympics, etc. And we are very proud of this initiative because we believe that sports and health somewhere are integrated. Women's health, we are a women's health company. Women's sports is something that is as neglected as women's health. So I think, in that sense, we believe that that is one of our flagship CSR, which really shows how an organization can not always have CSR as a business objective, right? It's much beyond that. It's more of having a long-term sustainable program, and we believe that's what we're doing.
I think that's a really great initiative the organization has been leading. So moving to Chavi, can you please share your take on how the CSR landscape is evolving? And most importantly, what are the key elements that make a communication strategies basically that make a CSR initiative more impactful and successful?
Thanks, Ritika, and thanks E4M for bringing this topic up front. As a number of my peers have shared, CSR has evolved from something we do to finish off the CFO's money to becoming something more impactful. And I think one of the key things, that has made this more impactful, or will make this more impactful rather, would be tracking all that we're doing. Literally today, as of today, it's only 26% of CSR projects that are actually tracked. And if you were to make a real impact and not, just look at optics, we need to be kind of, fortifying this aspect. And what I mean by that is, having engagements with third parties. A lot of organizations like the Tatas or the Hindustan Lever actually have very transparent projects, be it Project Shakti or what Tatas is doing for the water, sort of get more water supply sort in the villages, etc. I think those are the kind of projects which are tracked, which are transparent, which are sort of part of their sustainability reports. And today, with CSR now becoming an important element of the entire ESG scenario, I think that's one of the key areas that would make a difference in impacting and ensuring that whatever projects that we are doing are actually delivering the results that we want. From a communication aspect, a lot of my peers have already talked about the fact that it's moved on. It needs to move on from greenwashing. Today you look at these, not naming anyone specifically, but a lot of these fast-moving products or fast-moving garment industries talk about eco-packaging. It's a one-off thing. They don't even look back to how many children are employed in their factory or stuff like that. So you don't want to just be planting trees and saying, "Mera CSR ho gaya." That is not what it's all about. It's what Bhavna talked about. It's really pushing an agenda that kind of integrates with your overall business objective, and yet that agenda transcends your need for trying to make an impact from a profitable perspective or a brand perspective. If you can transcend that and you can make your CSR initiative something that is going to drive the national agenda, kind of integrate with the hyper-local agenda, and work towards achieving certain objectives, I think you would have made an impact.
Thank you, Chavi, for sharing your perspective. I think it's an amazing take. So moving back to Neha, yeah, I would like you to share what are the mistakes today's professionals are making in creating their CSR initiatives.
If I was to say a mistake, I think sometimes people mistake initiatives with impact. And real, I feel like it's more about, I spoke of earlier, Bhavna mentioned, Shavi highlighted, it's not about just doing something which is like a tick box, right? What is the long-term impact of it is what is CSR really, and that's the story that needs to be communicated. That's the story that needs to be amplified. So if I was to say, if this is something which I see is more common, where we try to put initiatives, we call it a little while ago before we started the panel, and we were talking about, we try to put it as campaigns. It's not really campaigns, it's not initiatives, and we need to move beyond that to really see the long-term impact of what we are doing.
Thank you. So, Kirti, like Chavi highlighted the importance of tracking in CSR initiatives. So, according to you, what are the most important measurement tools for measuring the impact of CSR initiatives?
I think having a framework of reporting, beyond the mandate, because I think we're all getting there and it's not exactly clear what is the government compliance requirement and what does the group want to do. But now, again, I understand when you talk about Tata's water projects and beyond, which is very well out there. But for other corporate homes to know that there is a requirement of a framework, which clearly there is. I think the greenwashing bit is a bit behind us today. There is an integration of CSR within your business strategy. The more often you're communicating your business strategy, which is when you are deploying and you have a framework of how you will communicate, your integrated CSR gets communicated along with, because it is so integrated. That framework for everyone to evolve together is a must. And I could speak for ourselves. IHCL reports, we have internally a calendar where I have color-coded, and I must see green when I communicate. And in a month, I must see 25 to 30% green boxes, because then I know I'm communicating. And that puts internal pressure, because you're running multiple projects, be it water, plastic, skilling, and so on and so forth for travel and tourism industry specific. But we also report it every quarter, along with our results. We report it annually. We report it when we give our market guidance, when we report it during our strategy rollout. It's an integral part of our communication. So we have a very strong, I would think, a framework, and that's the requirement.
That's an amazing one. So, as we have limited time left, so I'll quickly move to the rapid fire round, and we'll take quick answers. And starting with you, Rajiv. So the first, so the first is like one word people wrongly associate with CSR.
It's gonna be the CFO's pressure. I get it almost every month. I get it, and towards the end of the year when we have to create that annual report, it's like, अरे जल्दी से अपनी टीम को लगाओ, क्या क्या करा है, चार चीजें बताओ. So that's the kind of so I think it's transactional. I mean that's more.
I thought you weren't getting to it. It was rapid fire.
Yeah.
Okay, Bhavna, what's your answer on this?
I think the one word that people always mistake CSR is charity. I think for me that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I had something similar. I was going to say donation. Donate कर दिया, हमने पैसे दे दिए, यहाँ पे पैसे लगा दिए. Donation. I think that's like really a.
Okay, so what can be a better word then?
I would say impact. CSR. If you can relate it to impact, I think you would have done your job.
Great. So, Neha, the future, like biggest red flag in CSR storytelling.
Being inauthenticity, if I could say.
Kirti?
One word difficult. Sorry, Rajiv, I pulled you up on that one. Not integrated. When you're not integrated with your business strategy and you're communicating on the side, which is those initiatives or greenwash or whatever. So I would think that.
Okay. So, the last question for the panel, and keep it brief. So, a message that you would want to carry forward to the young professionals that are entering the industry, and how can they make CSR more impactful, like either campaigns or the impact they're creating with their work. So, starting with Rajiv again.
I think don't join communications. No. Join CSR. Yeah. Get expertise in CSR. See, we learned CSR, the forceful way. As I said, CFO comes up to you and he'll end up telling you, "Bhai, paisa lagana hai, kahan lagaoge?" Yeah, I don't like that CFO. Yeah. So I think one thing, have thorough knowledge on CSR. I did a couple of courses on compliances. I did a couple of courses on occupational standards. Now I'm doing a 6-week course over a weekend on AI-enabled CSR initiatives and all that. So I think if you need to be in the CSR, learn CSR first and then be a champion of CSR. I mean, it's not a bullseye that you can actually make otherwise.
Bhavna?
I think for me it's more in terms of stop looking at CSR as a campaign. Don't make it short term. Don't make it very scripted. Make it more sustainable. That's the only way it's going to live its life even after you've moved on. So I think that is the basic difference, and I feel that if you're presenting a CSR initiative and you require your marketing team in the room, and it's not going to happen without them, then that's not real CSR. So I think that's the definition for me.
Yes. Shavi?
I would talk about two things. One is that whatever you're doing today, it's a digital world. Please make it digital savvy and don't have over dependence on press releases. Press releases are not the way for this. So use your WhatsApps, your LinkedIns, your Instas to do your story, your LinkedIns to do your thought leadership, your WhatsApp to integrate with your employees, have your WhatsApp groups internal. So please use digital tools to ensure it has the right impact and people are made aware of it. And the other one would be, kind of integrated through the value chain. I touched upon it. There is a national agenda, there is a business agenda, and there is there's a local agenda. Make sure you marry all three when you're kind of looking at any of the projects that you pick up. And a very important integration is employees. employee volunteering, employees becoming your brand ambassadors. I think that's very important because they are going to be your mouthpieces without you requiring any other communication tool.
Okay, quickly moving to Neha.
Yeah, let's make it really fast. I think Shavi, Rajiv, Bhavna have covered most of it. I think even one line, if I have to make it very specific to communications professional, I would say be not just present, but be present where it's relevant. I think that's very important, and that sort of also alludes to what Shavi said, using the right mediums or, communicating the right messages across stakeholder universe. That's very, very critical. And I think one more thing, especially if you just look at communications, asking the right questions is very important. If you do not understand yourself, the how and why of it, there is no way we'll be able to communicate it ahead. And so asking the right questions to getting into, sometimes you will realize that actually teams haven't done the deep dive into actually answering questions themselves. And once you get into answering those questions, you can create a much powerful story than, what would have come to you otherwise on an email.
Okay, concluding the session. Kirti?
A lot has been said. I thought this additional point of what I would tell somebody joining in would be, you are the custodian of the reputation or the credibility. Don't do something that's, you're the last mile, you're holding up. And the one word I think as CSR communication professionals, I would weigh in on would be integrity. Look at it from its 360-degree approach, ask the right questions, see what is right, because it rests with you. So I think that's very important. Thanks.
Thank you so much. This is the panel. A huge round of applause for all the panelists. Thank you.